This sort of dovetails into a question you texted me yesterday about do we look to politics too much for our solutions as libertarians, or do we focus too much on trying to change politics rather than changing our own lives? And I thought that was an interesting point. You want to say what you were thinking?
Yeah, the exact quote I was talking about, like being a dissident, and I was like, do we as libertarians, and I think I said conservatives too, trying to be general, but do we focus too much on political dissidents when we should be focused on non-state politics dissidents and looking for a way to opt out of social norms? Like, because a lot of people are probably sitting around like, Trump lost, oh my gosh, Biden's coming in the next 4 years, we're going to be communists, which is a ridiculous take to have, but people generally really truly believe that.
I think so.
And they can't define communism either, but they believe it in their heart. They're very sincere. And I'm like, and they're always, our solution is like political dissidents and however that goes about.
People think, what can I as an individual do to change what I see happening or to fix what I see happening? And what can you do? Well, you can vote. Doesn't really do much because you're one of millions and millions of people voting. You can show up on the Capitol and stand on the lawn and wave a sign. Doesn't really accomplish much. Or what can you do in terms of your own life to opt out of these systems or to try to come up with alternative ways of doing things, which I think is ultimately more productive.
And especially if you do it in community, I think. If it's a group of people getting together voluntarily, agorism, coordinating, coming up with some alternative where you can bring in people that know a lot, like a businessman, a technologist, someone else. Like, oh, we can create this as an alternative to something. I'm thinking on a Catholic perspective, my low-hanging fruit example was like Joe Biden, who he's tapped to run HHS, is the same person who decided to go after the Little Sisters of the Poor and sue them because they didn't want to provide birth control or abortion-causing drugs for early pregnancy. It was against Catholicism's teaching, so you shouldn't expect a nun to pay for that. It's a nun.
Well, and especially a nun, they're not exactly at risk.
But that's very true. That's a shot across the bow, though, to appoint that guy to such a powerful position. So I'm like, a lot of people will be compromised on their beliefs, but like, is our solution to go protest, march around the Capitol, and then vote, and then get all worked up over who's president, or should we be looking more innovatively to create some other community, which is there's the Samaritan Network, which is like health cost sharing.
Right.
That's a low-hanging fruit example because I'm not very creative in my own head, but I'm like,
my go-to example would be people opting out of the school system and saying, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm going to teach my kids at home. And that's a good example of opting out.
Yeah.
But this is sort of a debate that has gone through the extreme libertarian community for a long time. You had the Rothbardians who were like, well, like it or not, the politicians are the ones who control what you do. So if you want to change things and get more freedom, you got to go and get the right people elected and run for office and vote and do all these political actions in order to affect change. And then you had a guy named Samuel Edward Konkin, I think his name was, who was said that's kind of a contradiction in terms. You can't use political power to reduce political power. It's never going to work.
Right.
And he said that's a waste of time. You should go and just kind of do black market stuff and do under the table stuff and just try to ignore the government and avoid the government on a more personal level. And that's the way to bring about the most freedom. And those two hated each other and fought all the time, even though they both ultimately wanted the same thing.
Well, I guess so to both of your points, I guess the thing that I hear out of that and what I think, and I agree with both. I agree with Mike's sort of whole ethos here, and is that take it, and I think that people need to take stock of what the government actually controls in their life.